Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Tipitina's Record Club podcast. My name is Ben Ellman.
And this is Robert Mercurio. Here we go again. Episode 7.
Episode 7. We're still at it.
Yeah.
Still here. Thanks for listening.
You can't get rid of us yet.
We're excited today to talk to our really good friend, Mr. Ben Jaffe, who has blessed us all with letting us reissue one of his family treasures.
Yeah, the Sister Gertrude Morgan record, which, as you'll hear in the podcast, I'm sure he'll be talking about, you know, how rare it is, how much it meant to his family, and how special it is that we get to put it out.
You know, there's a really amazing picture that he has at his house of him as a little baby sitting there watching Sister Gertrude play guitar.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a little kid during this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, let's give the pitch.
The pitch, yes, we are a vinyl subscription service. You sign up for either 3 or 6 records.
Yep, over a year, delivered
to
your door.
Yep, curated by us here. If you love New Orleans music, Gulf South music.
And vinyl.
Yeah, you're going to love it.
Yeah, and we give you a little what we call lanyap every month, which is a little extra little gift that we never know what's coming.
Mm-hmm. So tipitinasrecordclub.com.
Cool. Well, let's bring Ben in.
All right, let's go.
Come on, Ben Jaffe.
Thank you, Ben Jaffe, for being here. We sure appreciate it. Appreciate you coming uptown from downtown.
Yeah, you crossed Canal Street for this. This must be important.
Yeah.
Without you, we would not have this album.
I think it's really special that you all are releasing it. That's really special. And I mean, I have to give acknowledgement to the people who created the project originally. Larry Bornstein, who is responsible for really putting my parents in the position to create Preservation Hall, and was the person who introduced all of us to Sister Gertrude Morgan, and was responsible for really her work coming to prominence and really being even like acknowledged or shared and in any way. And apparently it was just coincidence that he ever met her in the first place.
Do you know how he originally met her?
From what I understand, Larry was a French Quarter resident, and all of his business was in the French Quarter. And having grown up in the French Quarter myself, I can tell you that even in the 70s and 80s, you could just live in the French Quarter and never leave. But there's a grocery store, and all the restaurants were there, and all the entertainment was there, and all the nightlife was there and excitement. So for
School?
artists,
There was a school?
it was cool.
No, a school.
School.
Yeah.
And I went to school in the French
Yeah,
Quarter.
you
Yeah,
didn't
that's
even have to
right.
leave.
My grammar school was in the
Yeah.
French Quarter. And
Did you know when you were young and growing up and going to school in the French Quarter that was something special and different from like living in Middle America?
I thought it was totally normal. I mean, because everybody I knew was living that life too. And my cousins we lived in the same building, like the same house. We lived in a traditional Creole double, but it was divided with a downstairs and an upstairs. So we had the first floor and they had the second floor. Aaron Lambert, you guys know Aaron and Howard. Howard Lambert is the manager at Preservation Hall, and Aaron plays drums. And our moms are sisters. When my parents moved here from Philadelphia, my parents had to, at one point, go back to Philadelphia to get all of their personal belongings because they made the choice to live here very quickly and stayed.
As a lot of us did.
Yeah. Without a lot of how are we going to figure this out and how are we going to get our belongings down here? They just ended up here. And when they realized maybe 6 months later that they had to go empty out their apartment in Philadelphia, my mom's sister came down with her husband at the time to watch Preservation Hall while they were gone. And they ended up staying. So, yeah.
Yeah. Be careful who you wish to visit.
Well, I mean, that's how it happens, right? I mean, look at you guys, just I think like 2 days ago I met an artist down at the co-op who was having an exhibit. She's telling me the story with so much excitement about how she came to New Orleans and fell in love with the city. And, she's like, and I just decided I'm moving. Like, I'm just staying. Why do I have to leave? And I've heard the story enough more times than I can actually recount that story.
Oh, yeah,
you
sure.
know.
And, I mean, Sister Gertrude wasn't really even from New Orleans, right? Moved here.
As far as I know, she was from Alabama, I think, originally, or Florida.
Yeah, that's what I had read from Alabama, and then moved here. And
Growing up, she was simply somebody that we knew, and I knew her artwork because we had it in our house. She would also use her artwork as teaching tools. We'd occasionally go out to her house right off Caffin Boulevard, not too far from Fats Domino.
In Holy Cross?
Actually, the other side, like further towards the Wrigley's, like across Claiborne, the Deep Nine.
Yeah.
Like where the breach happened. Yeah. That's like that side of the lower nine. She lived that way, and we would go out, and she would use these paintings as teaching tools for kids, and
like teaching
like scripture and stuff.
Yeah, sometimes scripture, or she used to do pieces of the alphabet. She had these pieces where she would illustrate the alphabet.
Wow.
Yeah,
because she was. I read also ran an orphanage in Gentilly. Seemed like she did a lot of good.
She did
stuff.
a lot. I mean, that I could say that she was like one of the people who, when you were around her, you felt the goodness of her, like just being. You know, you felt like there was this very like a deep warmth to her that you don't feel often in life, but you feel it pretty often. You kind of feel it every now and then in New Orleans from people who they're gracious, and they're giving, and they're sort of always thinking of other people, and she was that type of person.
Yeah, seems like it. And what I had read is that she would perform in the French Quarter and use her tips and busking money or whatever to help fund the orphanage, which is wild.
I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Just so giving, yeah.
That's probably, I mean, it's my understanding that that's how Larry first came in contact with her, was in the French Quarter. I mean, back when I was growing up, busking was not as commonplace as it is today. You know, a lot of like Tuba Fats was really the person who like changed the whole scene, where he was really the first regular local person I know
in Jackson Square.
Like even on Royal Street, like people would come through, but they were usually like passing through during Jazz Fest or crossing the country and just kind of hitting cities because they would get run out of different cities and just move on to the next place, you know. So, but Tuba Fats really changed that. Before that, they would allow, I guess, ministers or people who were preaching to be out on the street without hassling them. You know?
And that's what she was doing with her bullhorn?
Yeah, I think she was probably just out there preaching the word of God, the holy word, and just out there trying to spread the good word.
Do you think she considered herself an artist, or was respected as an artist back then, or was it just sort of a means of her preaching?
That's what I think is so like brilliant about Larry's discovery, or I wouldn't say discovery, but him acknowledging her as an artist. I mean, in the 1950s, probably when she was like, you know, and 60s when she was kind of in the French Quarter at that time, the same with like the music scene here. There wasn't a lot of presence of mind for what like the art that was already here happening in New Orleans, like whether it was the like Mardi Gras Indians or like Second Line, you know, the funeral tradition, or even the older musicians that were, you know, had been playing here since like the turn of the century. There wasn't a real deep appreciation or understanding of what it was, you know, of like this incredible thing. And I think the same goes for a lot of self-taught artists. There hadn't been this like appreciation, like collective appreciation for self-taught art.
Yeah, they probably didn't call it folk art back then.
No, I mean, it was probably just, you know, oh, there's this lady who preaches, and I wasn't, you know, maybe it was like cute, or comical because I mean there's like a childlike quality to her work, which is really beautiful. Like especially having a child, their love is like really beautiful because it's really pure. That was what was so I think so special about it is that I never knew her to like really think of herself as an artist. Like she never.
Or maybe even a singer, or even just did what she did, right?
I think
because her music is so soulful and deep and hypnotizing.
That comes from like the universe, it doesn't come from like having to pay a bill,
right?
Or like having to like show up at a certain time to some place. It's like this is what I'm inspired. It's like very inspired, right?
Mm-hmm.
To do that,
like a calling
to do it.
Was that what she would be doing on the street, performing like that, or was it more just like talking like through a bullhorn, like you're saying, Ben?
It was like it would be a
with
combination
a tambourine
of things. She would have a tambourine. She had a guitar. I've heard. I have heard some recordings of her playing guitar.
Yeah, there's a picture of her playing guitar on the insert,
and that's wild too because I don't know what it's tuned to.
Well, there's a recording of her playing with somebody at the hall, right?
I think like one time they attempted to see what would happen if they got different musicians together in this like way, but it was very kind of experimental to see what would happen between musicians that normally wouldn't perform together in like that style.
So the Sister Gertrude came out on Preservation Hall Records, but were there records before that on Preservation Hall label?
There was the first album on the Preservation Hall label was a live album that my dad produced that was Sweet Emma, and it was like the first incarnation of the Preservation Hall band, and it was their second show out of town. Like they had done one show in 1963 in Minneapolis, and then were invited back a year later, and they decided to record that show.
Well, so many bands and musicians of that era had to go to Chicago or other places to record because there just really wasn't a modern recording facility in New Orleans.
Also, things were regional, so the recordings that were coming out of New Orleans in the 50s and 60s of early New Orleans jazz musicians all seemed to be sort of in that Alan Lomax style of like documenting a moment, like documenting a funeral parade or documenting a band at a church dance.
Yeah, not like pre-set up with a bunch of mics and stuff, more like a mobile tape recorder.
No, but just like Ben was saying, it's like the ones that did like recordings like that were coming out of New York and Chicago and the West Coast, like Los Angeles.
So for the Sister Gertrude record, do you have any insight on how it was recorded?
Okay, this is what I know. This is what I know about the story. Is I believe that it was recorded. I talked to Larry's daughter, Sasha Bornstein, about this, and she said that the prayer room was Sister Gertrude Morgan's house in the Ninth Ward. Mm. And I've also heard that I've seen photographs too that were taken around that time that in Larry's office on Royal Street, and I had heard that it could have been recorded there or that it could have been recorded in the Ninth Ward. Both make sense to me because the guy who did the sound on the record, I don't know if you've like done any research on this guy, Chirac. What I know is the reason that the record came about is there was a gentleman in town who was making a film, a sort of unscripted film about New Orleans and music, and had a relationship with my dad, and came from Los Angeles and was doing this with a grant from I think the Ford Foundation and for PBS, and was just here to document sort of New Orleans music at that time, and ended up making a film called Till the Butcher Cut Him Down, which is about the life of Punch Miller. But it ended up being like about a lot more than just Punch Miller. And this gentleman, Chirac, was the sound person on that film who came with him from Los Angeles. So I believe that it was that's why the record was made, was because there was this professional sound person in town at the, kind of free of charge, so to speak, with
the tools.
with all this professional gear to work on this like very high-end film documentary, this unscripted film, which is actually, you can get it. It's actually really beautifully shot and kind of this strange story about, I mean, it actually captures Jazz Fest when it was still in Congo Square. That they just happened to be in town at this time. So they capture like a lot of early Jazz Fest footage. They capture some shows at the Municipal Auditorium, and because this guy Chirac was the sound guy on it, and I knew the director's passed away, but I'm in touch with his children, and I know that they all, he's like, oh yeah, Ivan Chirac did the sound. He never told me that he did it, but I just put two and two together. He wouldn't have come back. Nobody would have like just hired him to like come back to do this recording. It was more like, oh, this is an opportunity to do this. Let's take an afternoon and go fire up the tapes and set up a microphone.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of overdubs. And then, I mean, to bring it all back to like the artwork, right? The artwork of the record is her artwork.
Yes.
And then you once told us that you could purchase it and then she would come back and draw on it again, right?
Yeah.
For a little more money.
Yeah.
Is that something you get it from Press Hall or like local record stores or?
No, I think there were local record stores. There was no like Louisiana Music Factory.
Mm-hmm.
There was a record
Jim
store
Russell.
on Canal Street, Jim Russell. But they didn't
weren't
really
selling
deal.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want something like this, if you had to belong to like one, kind of like what you guys are doing with the record club. You had to, like, my parents would send out, I remember them sending out typed up catalogs that they would go like Xerox and mail out, with like the band schedule, their tour schedule, and then like the flip side of it would be like a return card that you could, with perforated edges, that you could send back and check boxes for like which albums you wanted. You would have to order them. So everything was like, mail order at that time for stuff like this. Or if you were in the French Quarter and wandering around and happened to be at Preservation Hall and were there when, if it overlapped while Sister Gertrude Morgan was there and, it was open, like a lot of things had to fall into place.
Yeah.
Wasn't
Amazon back then?
Yeah, this was, it was the Amazon.
If you had an album in hand and you saw her, then she would.
I think somebody told me it was like $5 for the album or $10 for her to, if she was there, she would charge like an extra $5, and then she would paint. She would hand paint on top of the album.
Yeah,
it's exciting. I mean, there aren't that many of these original copies floating around in the world. There wasn't like a huge demand for them. I really don't think that they.
How many? A couple hundred. Were pressed. Can't imagine thousands, right? No.
I think it's in the hundreds. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of my music head friends, before anything was ever like available digitally, knowing that I had a copy of it was like this holy grail, thing for a lot of people, that they'd, heard about it, because you had to be like way deep, not just into music, but like into New Orleans, and then like into art and into folk art, and to get like to put all these things together, that there was a record, and then maybe even like had some affiliation with my parents or Larry's family. It's just not that common a thing. I mean, I'm shocked when someone knows about it.
I definitely think more people know about it now, but we should talk for a second about the collaboration with this record and King Britt on Rope-A-Dope.
Yeah, King Britt's a DJ who was introduced to me through, through Rope-A-Dope at the time. I don't even know exactly. I think what happened is someone at Rope-A-Dope knew about the Sister Gertrude project, put two and two together, and reached out to me and put me in touch with King Britt's manager at the time, Mr. Greg Lucas, who now lives in New Orleans, and and like is the director of our foundation now.
Yeah.
But I remember my first conversation with Greg was, oh, well, let me get King the record, and and then let you guys talk about it. And once he got it, he immediately he was like, oh wait, I think this is I've heard about this, and he's a music head, so he put it all together really quickly what this was, and that was right at the height, I think, of record diving too, with Shadow, and just everybody was looking for the thing that hadn't been released, and the thing that the Holy Grail project, and then King and I just also really connected because of my parents' affiliation with Philadelphia, and he's a Philly guy. So many things came together. King grew up in the kind of Sun Ra world. His mother was a part of the whole Sun Ra community, so he grew up in this kind of jazz world, and he was a little bit older than all the Roots guys in high school. So I think he was the first person to have them perform at one of his DJ nights. He used to do these regular parties at this oh god, I can't think of the name of it. It's this kind of cool diner.
Yeah, what was that called?
What do they call it? It's a Silk City.
Yeah, Silk City, right?
Yeah. So I heard about Silk City from King, because that was his regular, that was his regular weekly thing, was at Silk City. And he would have these featured nights where he would have different artists come and be featured at Silk City. So it was all these things were kind of lining up. And then what really intrigued me about it is he said that he didn't want to remix the album in the way that Moby was doing, remixing sort of gospel. He's like, I want to use it as inspiration and incorporate it into new compositions. So him and his collaborator Tim Motzer wrote all new material and incorporated samples from the original album into his project, and then toured it with a live band. It was the first time that I ever saw people DJing with video in time to music, where all that technology was so new at that time, where you could time the music or time the video to the music, and could be actually DJing and triggering video in time with the music. So when he ended up doing it here in New Orleans at Voodoo, that was when I actually gave them all access to all of my video archives, and it was really spectacular. I ended up playing bass and tuba on that gig. Cool. And but it was amazing. It was just incredible. It was the first time I'd ever I mean, we were talking about the Sphere, and I'm thinking back to okay, this is 2007, 2008. It's almost 20 years ago.
How far it's
and how far it's come. But back then it was cutting edge. We had a screen behind us, and
and this is obviously after she passed away.
Yeah, she passed away in 1980, I believe.
Seemed like that.
Yeah.
80s. And then she had this second coming with this King Britt album, and then another 20 years later now we're pressing it again, in its original form.
Totally. This is, I mean, it's crazy because in a couple of years, it's going to be the 20th anniversary of King's album too,
Right.
Which is amazing. It's interesting because this was a record also that we had in our house. It's kind of something you might hear on OZ, on that Jerry Brock might play on Sunday morning. I mean, having Jerry there, being the curator of all the music that was played is about as cool as you can get. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's you're going to hear the best music.
Yet WWOZ started upstairs at Tips They used to drop a mic down for the
That's
live
right.
broadcasts.
That's right. Yeah, before they moved to Armstrong Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and then just Jerry Brock is one of the kind of unsung heroes of New Orleans music, and like a griot of information. Every time I think I know anything about music, Jerry would be like, "Oh, well, but did you know about the B-side?" Like, "Oh, what?" Yeah. Between him and like John Sinclair,
Yeah, it's deep.
It's deep.
Well, man, thanks for bringing us in your
I know.
world here.
We went everywhere today.
So bringing, you brought us in your world of Sister Gertrude and all the,
I mean, we didn't even get to talk about the 4-leaf clover.
Oh, well, let's bring that up
down there, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You've always said the house isn't there anymore.
Well, I'll recount this story just because it's so. You all will appreciate it because you live through it, and you live through Katrina. You've got your Katrina stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got your Katrina story. Like, we all have emotional stories about Katrina. I'm sure some are sad, some are really happy, some are joyous. And we're all sitting here, so I mean, it worked out. Whatever battles we fought,
We're still here.
We're still here, And but I remember for a long time I couldn't leave I couldn't leave the Marigny, because I lived at that time right off Frenchman Street. And I just couldn't leave the neighborhood. I mean, you remember the lights were off everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
The lights were on in the French Quarter. It was crazy. I mean, it was just wild. What just a dark, city it was. And you would venture out a little bit, and then you would see something that crazy, like a boat in a tree, or a car sitting on top of a house, and you would, you're like, okay, how do I process this? But I just remember one day just kind of feeling kind of in the need to explore, and just to kind of see for myself what the hell was going on. And I got on St. Claude, and then as soon as I got to the St. Claude Bridge over the Industrial Canal, I don't know what happened. I kind of went blank, just sort of don't really remember, because it had been, I don't know, I hadn't been back to Sister's house since my childhood. Then I don't know her address. I couldn't tell you right now. I don't even know. I'm not sure what street she lives on. But I mean, I could take you. I could still take you to her, where her house was. But back then, it's I hadn't been there in 20 years, probably, or more. And I just remember driving and turning, and then when I got to this one block, I remember kind of having presence of mind. I made a left, and I'm driving, and just kind of came to a slow stop, and just thinking to myself, okay, I'm sure this is her house, but there's no way this could possibly be her house. At the same time, there's no way that I just, without having to drive around for 20 minutes or, in that state. And I was there's only one way to know, so get out of the car and just, close my eyes, bend down, pick something. And that's what it was like at that time. You could just, anywhere you were within the boundaries of her house, her yard, you would pick a 4-leaf clover. Mm-hmm. It was and that was kind of the sign for me that was okay, man, you're here. There's voices, there's people here, there's souls here. This is right. You're supposed to be here. Keep going. It was. I mean, it was.
You're saying as post Katrina was some sort of encouragement to you of
absolutely
of life goes on, and
absolutely,
wow.
Long after we're gone.
Yeah, long after. That was
totally
good 20 years after she had passed, and there's still 4-leaf clovers.
And we're sitting here talking about her,
yeah,
whatever, 50 years later or whatever.
It's really amazing. Well,
it's important.
Well, we can't thank you enough for letting it back out into the world in a different incarnation here.
Yeah,
I'm excited that everybody's going to get it, is going to put this on somewhere.
Yeah,
and
all
just
over America,
going to melt their minds.
Yeah,
that's really special, and especially on vinyl, that's really beautiful. Just that experience for it to come out as it was intended and created originally is really special.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much,
yeah.
Ben. It's been really awesome
Absolutely.
talking to you about her.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you guys, man.
Wow. Okay, that was awesome, man. It's
Thank
great
you
to
so
talk
much,
with
Ben.
Ben. Yeah.
It's great to always hang with him.
Yeah, he's got such a wide range of stuff that he's involved with and that his family's been involved with Preservation Hall, and such really cool perspective on this record.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you listening. Next month, reissuing this album by Browning Bryant.
Yeah.
And what makes this album so special?
I mean, he was a 15-year-old kid from South Carolina that came down to work with Alan Toussaint, the master producer, songwriter from New Orleans, and Alan put together a band of Most of the Meters with Smokey Johnson on drums, and crafted these songs with this 15-year-old kid that sound like...
It sounds like an Alan Toussaint Meters record.
It's
amazing. It's really an incredible production and great songwriting, and just a really cool record that will bring you back to a lot of other records you might have heard sort of that Alan was making in that period.
Yeah, so it's again another rare record that hopefully you guys will enjoy.
Tipitina's Record Club. We are a vinyl subscription service. You sign up, we'll send you over the course of a year either 3 records or 6 records, your choice. And we hope you decide to become a member if you're not.
Yeah, bring it on. It makes a great present, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.